Hello, I'm Joanna Dunn. I'm a yoga teacher based in Leavenworth, Washington, and I'm joining you here from the beautiful Sleeping Lady Mountain Resort in Leavenworth. And today I'm going to bring you a series for the core, for core strength. And I'm going to do my best to try to provide multiple levels so that the practice can be accessible to a wide range of people, and challenging to those of you who need that, say, door number 3 or level 3 challenge. The way that I work, we'll start on the back, soles of the feet to the floor, arms by your sides. And the way that I work with the core is I like to teach a little bit of anatomy as I go. And we work from the deepest layer of the core and move out to the more superficial layers of the core. So first thing I'm going to have you do is just bring your awareness to the back of your body. Feel the back of the body resting against the floor. Notice the curves of your spine relative to the floor underneath you. We're going to call this your neutral spine. So the curves that you have in place in your neck and in your low back that you can feel that pull away from the floor, and then there's the curve of the upper back as it touches the floor. Maybe the tailbone or the base of the spine touching the floor, back of the head touching the floor. So this is your, what we'll call your neutral spine with the curves in place. You're not flattening your back or arching it. To wake up the transverse abdominis, which is the deepest layer of the core and is like a girdle. People talk about it as a girdle. You can maybe imagine that it is, in a way, our muscular girdle that runs from the spine, attaches to the low ribs and the top of the pelvis, and it goes all the way around from the back of the body all the way around to the front, attaching to a line of fascia in the front of the body, pubic bone, pelvis, and low ribs. So this soft portion of the front of your body and the back of your body, that is all covered by the transverse abdominis. And to wake it up, one way that's very easy to get to know the transverse abdominis is to take an inhale. You'll feel your belly respond, most likely. But then as you exhale, take a long, slow, complete exhale. So a complete exhale. Inhale. And exhale. And just squeeze all your breath out. And you should feel a toning as you squeeze all your breath out. You should feel a toning across your abdomen. And if it's helpful, you can put your hands and feel your belly in a relaxed state. So you take an inhale and exhale and feel the softness of your abdomen. And then again, take an inhale. And at this time, as you exhale, draw the breath all the way out, toning, firming up. You'll feel a firming underneath your fingertips at the bottom of the exhale. And just do several rounds of that. Inhale, relax the muscle on the inhale, and as you exhale, engage that muscle. Now the next stage is to learn how to keep that muscle engaged as you inhale. So just a few times, give it a try. Inhale. And then as you exhale, tone the belly, engage the transverse abdominis. And then as you inhale, try to keep that muscle engagement and you'll have to inhale up into the rib cage and chest because the belly can't respond. And the transverse abdominis is a very important muscle for stabilization of the spine. Stabilization of the spine, for example, when you're doing any sort of activity, even a low-level activity in a standing position, a transverse abdominis is going to have some level of engagement. But particularly as you are doing more challenging things, the transverse abdominis has an important role to play in stabilizing the spine. And now we're going to challenge the transverse abdominis even further. So if you can, keep it engaged as you take an inhale. If not, then just keep working on that. If you're able to keep it engaged, then you're going to begin to move into what's called marching. And this comes from the physical therapy world. You're going to take one foot up, place it down, and I think it's helpful to have your hands, one hand on the top of your pelvis, the other one finger on the top of your pelvis, so the pinky finger maybe on the top of your pelvis, and the thumb on the rib cage, and you're attempting to keep your pelvis and your rib cage in, not letting them move in relationship to one another. So in other words, if you took your knee in towards your chest and your low back flattened, then you'd be taking the top of your pelvis towards your rib cage, bottom of the rib cage towards your pelvis. You want to try and keep that neutral curve, keep your spine still as you lift and lower your feet. You don't want the pelvis to rock a lot side to side, so just keeping that awareness. If you're able to do this, then you can take both legs up, continue to use the transverse abdominis to keep your spine still, keep the pelvis and rib cage in same relationship to one another, and then just step one foot down, and then the other. Another way to challenge the transverse abdominis that may be simpler for some people is to do what's called knee drop. So you drop one knee off to the side, again, trying to keep your pelvis and your rib cage in same relationship to one another. Keep the low back still. The knee goes off to the side and then back to center. And the opposite knee, just make sure that the opposite knee, the knee that's not moving, is not counter. You can't move both knees at the same time because then they're just counterweighting one another. So one knee stays still, the other knee drops out. Okay. So that's our transverse abdominis, and as important as it is to have a strong transverse abdominis, it's also important for you to be able to relax that muscle. We don't want to have chronic tension in that muscle. It would interfere with your ability to take a very relaxed, easy breath. So just pause. Take a few rounds of breath, letting that muscle relax. And now moving out from the transverse abdominis to the next layer is the obliques, the oblique muscles. There's an internal oblique and external oblique, and they're involved in side bending and twisting movement. So you're going to bring your knees in towards your chest, and you'll notice your lumbar spine is going to flatten. And just begin to take the knees to one side and then bring them back to center. So these are the obliques There's a little bit of upper body strength here for sure, but it's the obliques mainly that are controlling the fall of the knees to the side and then bringing them back to center. Try to keep your knees and your ankles together, and watch for the tendency for the knees to creep away from your body and down more at a 90-degree angle. You want to try and keep the knees up, almost as if you were going to touch your knees to your elbow. Okay, and you don't have to go all the way down. You might just be working more in a range of motion like this. If you're ready for a bigger challenge, you can extend your legs, or even one leg. I'll show you. Shift your hips to one side. So I shifted my hips to the left. And you can extend your left leg and take your left leg towards your right hand, your left foot towards your right hand, and then come back to center. Shift your hips to the other side. So I'm shifting my hips to the right, and then extending my right leg towards my left hand. So that's level 2, we'll call it. And then level 3, the legs are straight, completely straight. And you shift the hips to one side, and the legs go to the other side. Don't try to keep your feet perfectly stacked. Let your feet shift. Shift your hips to the left. Feet and legs go to the right. So you're shifting your hips to one side. There's a little bit of our most superficial muscle, the rectus abdominis. There's a little bit of work there too, just to make this, but we'll get more familiar with that in just a moment. Okay. So that's the obliques. The last layer, as I said, is the rectus abdominis, and it attaches pubic bone to the top of the bottom of the ribs. And it's our sort of stereotypical six-pack abs that we see. And to wake that one up, to become aware of that one, most of us are pretty aware of it from sit-ups. We're going to do a curl up. So you start with your arms overhead, take an inhale, and as you exhale, reach your arms forward and bring your forehead towards your knees and your knees towards your forehead. Try to get your tailbone up off the floor. Inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, curl up. Inhale. And exhale. And just one more. If you need to, if your neck gets fatigued, you can always support your head with your hands. And then this time as you lower down, just put your feet on the floor. And in this particular series, there can be some tension that builds up right in the front of the hip, in the hip flexors here. So just to relieve any tension in the front of the hip, we're going to come into bridge pose, which is also a nice way to wake up the back body core, which I'm not going to get into in this particular video, but is a very important part of the core as well. So feet on the floor, heels drawn in, feet about 6 to 8 inches apart. Press down into your feet and lift your hips up. Take an inhale at the top of your pose and exhale and come back down. And just do that a few times. And you lower down, stretch your legs out, and just rest for a moment on your back. Now this particular video it's not comprehensive. We didn't talk about the pelvic floor, for example, or the back of body core, or other parts that might be considered core muscles. We really just dealt with the core that is located in the abdomen and the transverse abdominis, which wraps around, the obliques wrap around to the spine. And then you can just roll over to your side and come on up to sit. And that completes our core series, our core wake up. Moving from the inner layer, coming out, the 3 layers of the core. Thanks once again for joining me. Namaste.